I forgot to say this in the last video, but for anyone who has any questions or comments or even a request on a topic you'd like me to cover, let me know down in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Or if you're on Facebook, you can let me know in the comments in the post. Or if you're on my friends list, you can shoot me a message in case it's something, you know, you just want it to be personally. Anyway, today we're going to do idolatry. Now, for anyone who has any basic knowledge of religion in general, I think you all know what idolatry is. You know, it's worshiping other gods. Mostly, when people think of idolatry, they think of, gods of wood and stone, made up gods. And the first commandment is God doesn't want us to have any other gods before Him. But what about to Christians? The New Testament mentions idolatry. 1 Corinthians 10:14 says, "Therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry." Now, as Christians, at least I hope people out there we don't worship, wood or stones. We don't, or we're not supposed to, at least, make images, even if it's of God. Say, this is God, this is how I envision Him, so I'm going to worship Him, in case someone wants something tangible, to see and worship. We're not supposed to do that. And I'm sure the majority of us, if not all of us, don't. So, what is idolatry to a Christian? Well, for us, our form of idolatry is when we put things before God and that we neglect God. Say you have a relationship, job, hobby, whatever, and you let that get between you and your time with God. You start neglecting God. Well, that's a form of idolatry. Yeah, you might not be worshiping another God in a sense like the Old Testament is, but you're letting something or someone get between you and God. And the thing about this is sometimes we don't even realize we're doing this. And we can do this so easily. Like things in life, we get caught up in them, and like I said, job, friends, family, relationships, they can easily come between us and God. Now, what this idolatry does is it hurts our relationship with God, since we're pushing God further away from us. We're not as close. Think of it as, relationships, communication is key. If you don't communicate with each other, more times than not, you're going to drift apart. So is with our relationship with God. We're going to drift apart if we let something come between us. And if we get further away from God, the more vulnerable we are to sin. So how do we prevent this? How do we fix this? Well, what you could do is set aside a time every day where you spend time in God's Word, in prayer, some sort of worship, anything. You set this time and you make sure you stick to it. Now, some emergencies might come up, and that's understandable, but to your best, we should set a time and stick to that time that we spend with God. Even if it's 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, we should set aside time for God. My mom and I, every evening, we make sure to set aside time to read God's Word. It takes us probably about 20 minutes or so, and we spend that time in God's Word, denying ourselves anything else at that time to make sure we have God's Word. And that is important, so we stick to God. Now, it's just like I said, things just come up in our lives. And the devil can use this too. He can use things to separate. Now, I'm not saying, if you have things, cut them out of your life completely. I'm not saying that. Now, if such things are leaving you into a life of sin already, then that's a different story. Because Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. What he's meaning by that is to whatever you do that sins, cut it out of your life. So if one of these things is causing you to sin, has been, then yeah, you need to cut it out of your life. But I'm not telling you to cut it out if it is coming between, unless you think you have to. If you feel convicted and you think it's too much, then yeah, cut it out of your life if you think you should and you can, but I'm not telling you to. Just make more time for God. So to reiterate, to us, our form of idolatry is letting things come between us and God. That is what idolatry is. And like I said, the scary thing about it is sometimes we don't know. Now eventually we'll learn, God will let us know that we're drifting apart. Our relationship from God with God will become weaker and weaker, and we'll realize that. So yeah, the answer to that is just set aside a time, even if it's 15, 20, 30 minutes, or an hour if you can spare it. Just read God's Word, spend time in prayer, and just associate with Him. Anyway, that's a wrap for this one. So stay tuned next time as we learn about spiritual discipline. What exactly is spiritual discipline? And God disciplines His children. How does He do it? Alright. I'll see you in the next episode. Stephen out.